Welcome to the Bible Momming Podcast, where we are parenting by the book. I'm your host, Paula Whidden. This podcast is for women who struggle with regular mom stuff, but also long to have their kids grow closer to Christ. It's a lifetime journey, and we're in it together. As a real mom, you just never know where I'll be podcasting from, but I'll always be available for you. Now let's get started. Hello, mamas. I am coming to you today from my car while I'm waiting for my daughter to have her drum lessons. I love having a daughter in drum lessons. It's always fun because I get all these different friends of mine who tell me the stories of how girls didn't used to be drummers, and there's something in me that lights up when my kids are walking a slightly different path from everybody else. I don't know if that happens to you, but it does happen to me. Today we are talking about how sleep matters and what happens when we get it or we don't get it. Now, whether you are a new mom or a night terror mom with infants or a mom with a teenager who wants to stay up all night, we all struggle with sleep. I've learned from science all sorts of different things about sleep, and I love learning that because when I learn the scientific stuff, what it does is it teaches me how God designed us and the things that we don't necessarily naturally know about ourselves. And when we know those things about His design, we can work together with it and be healthier, better people. I love learning that stuff. Now, this is something I personally struggle with, though. I am, from a long way back, a person who loves to stay out late. It's just been a part of my chemical makeup, it seems. From the time I was a teenager, I would wake up in the middle of the night and sneak into our living room, go turn on the TV, and watch something separate. I would then, of course, stay up late and have a hard time waking up and all sorts of fun things like that there. And the funny thing is, I knew it was a struggle probably in my mid-20s, but I didn't really try to fight it because, there's this sort of a culture, at least it seems to exist, or at least it was when I was in my 20s, that everything that was interesting happened late at night. And so I wanted to keep staying late at night, no problem. Plus, as a youth pastor, it became perfect because then I could easily talk with the kids who were up late, and we were, I was raring to go as they were raring to go, and that was fabulous, I thought. The catch is your body forms these habits, and you get stuck in these habits, and it is every bit as difficult to change any habit that you've had for a long time as it is to quit smoking, which is a habit. So one of the things I have struggled with as a mom is the realization that, hey, wait a second, me staying up late may not be beneficial to me or my family. I remember in the early days when my kids were munchkins and they would come in, and I don't remember exactly what time it was. I'm guessing it was probably 6 a.m., which was an average time for a 3-year-old to wake up. And they would come into our room, and they never went to Tim. They went to me. They would look me straight in the eye as I'm turned toward the side of the bed and just stand there and say, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. And and how do you don't get grumpy at that? I mean, I'll confess there was some inner grumpiness as I was resenting waking up, but they're just so stinking cute. So I would get up and I would be exhausted because, of course, I stayed up until probably midnight or 1 just so I could have private me time, and the struggle continued. Now, as my daughter was ready to enter elementary school, we discovered that I had accidentally messed her up too, as I got notes from the teacher telling me that she probably needed more sleep because she was falling asleep in class. Imagine how embarrassing that was for me. I thought I was so smart here. I was a youth pastor, I did children's ministry, all this stuff, and my kid was falling asleep in school. And so I had to figure out, what do I do here? So I did a whole bunch of research trying to figure out how to help my kids, and that did help. We very, very adamantly was able to stick to that. There was a long time where my kids always went to bed at 8 p.m., no later than 8 p.m., so they could get the amount of sleep they needed. But I myself still struggled. Now, there's some Bible verses related to this, but it's a little bit of a steep stretch, and I'm going to be honest with you. It's not like the Bible goes into, hey, you should get some sleep. And yet, there are things that made me think of that as I was looking at it. Often we talk about how we know that in Genesis 2:2, that by the seventh day God had finished the work that he had been doing on creation. And so on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And we know that that's a role model for us, as he told us in Deuteronomy that of the 10 Commandments, one of them is to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And that's the day of rest. But then I also remember reading in Psalm 4:8, it says, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Now, when Jesus was around and he was helping us to understand God even more, he was pointing out in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And then I always remember Hebrews 4:10, "For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their work, just as God did from his." Now, like I said, this is clearly not about how many hours of sleep you get, but isn't there something sweet about the idea of just getting some rest? And imagine if we're getting the proper amount of sleep for our bodies, for this body God designed, how much more rested we are, and how that overflows into other things. I did some digging. I wanted to find out some of the things related to sleep, research on sleep, and there are a couple different places I found things, but there has been plenty of research on sleep. There are places that, like the National Sleep Foundation. I found that there is a sleep council in Canada and in the United Kingdom. I found, it's amazing the research that's gone out on sleep. So some of the things I found out: did you know sleeping causes accidents? According to research, apparently, sleep deprivation was a factor in some of the biggest disasters in recent history, including the nuclear accident of 3 Mile Island, the massive Exxon Valdez oil spill, in the 1986 nuclear meltdown of Chernobyl. So people were working with lack of sleep, and they made bad judgment calls. It can also be a public safety hazard, because when you are on the road and you are drowsy, you can have slow reaction time, almost as much as if you were driving drunk. Lack of sleep will also dumb you down. And this is crazy to me to realize that it impairs our attention, our alertness, our concentration, reasoning, problem solving. It makes it more difficult for us to learn efficiently. And apparently, during the night, various sleep cycles play a role in what they call consolidating our memories in the mind. And if we don't get enough sleep, then we're not able to remember what we learned and experienced during the day. Isn't that interesting? Also, sleep deprivation can lead to some serious health problems, including heart disease, heart attack, heart failure, irregular heartbeats, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes. All of these are actually related to sleep disorders and chronic sleep loss. There is evidence that lack of sleep kills our sex drive. Anybody who has a young child recognizes this and realizes the experience of that. We could have depleted energy, and we get more tense because of the fact that we have that depleted energy, and it affects guys and ladies. I still remember a conversation with my husband where we were checking in going, "So, you having enough?" And in just sheer fatigue, looking at each other in all honesty and saying, "Yeah, right now, yeah, enough." It's just one of those, oh my goodness. Yeah, I realized that was more information than you wanted. But that really, really, really plays a role in that sort of issue in our lives. Also, sleepiness, lack of sleep, is depressing. Sleep disorders and lack of sleep can contribute to the symptoms of depression. There was a 2005 Sleep in America poll where people were diagnosed with depression and anxiety. It discovered were more likely to sleep less than 6 hours a night. And on the positive side, treating sleep problems can help depression and its symptoms and so on. So getting more sleep helps lessen depression, and getting less sleep increases depression. Now, this is one that many of us have heard as like a wives' tale, but it's totally true. Lack of sleep ages your skin. There is such a thing as needing your beauty rest. So there you go, ladies. Most people have experienced like the sallow skin and puffy eyes after a few nights of missed sleep, but it turns out that chronic sleep loss can lead to lackluster skin, fine lines, dark circles under your eyes. Oh, yay, some fun stuff makes you want to sleep more. Sleepiness can make you forgetful. It affects your memory. There was a 2009 researchers from America and France determined that brain events called sharp wave ripples are responsible for consolidating memory. Ooh, I feel smarter just saying that. The ripples also transferred learning information from our hippocampus to our neocortex of the brain. Don't you feel smarter? Where long-term memories are stored. These sharp wave ripples occur mostly during our deep levels of sleep. So if you forget stuff easily, it might be that you're not having the deep levels of sleep. Now, here's one that I found interesting. And man, this would have helped me when I was younger, to work on my sleep if I had known this. Losing sleep can make you gain weight. I don't know if you knew that, but this is, I looked up several different studies. According to a 2004 study, people who sleep less than 6 hours a day were almost 30% more likely to become obese than people who slept 7 to 9 hours. So there you go. Sleep loss impairs our judgment. It actually affects our judgment on sleep. A researcher said that studies showed over time, people who are getting 6 hours of sleep instead of 7 or 8 begin to feel that they've adapted to sleep deprivation and they've gotten used to it. But if you look at how they actually do on tests of mental alertness and performance, they will continue to go downhill. So there's a point of sleep deprivation where we lose touch of how impaired we are. There's other stuff. It's amazing. Lack of sleep is involved with increased risk for cancer, inflammation around your body. It makes it hard for you to control your emotions. I discovered that when I have lack of sleep, I had to start telling my girls that mama didn't get much sleep. And so if I'm grumpy today, please know that is probably what it is. It's not that I don't love you, my beloveds. It can be harder to read other people's emotions when you have a lack of sleep. It weakens your immune system. My husband, he has to work a second job, and actually he enjoys it and he has to do it. It's kind of a mixed blessing there. And every time he works late, I'm always concerned for him and his immune system. There's an increased risk for diabetes. It reduces the effectiveness of vaccines. Oh my goodness. It's just, are you guys getting overwhelmed with all the stuff sleep does? It makes you weaker. It actually destroys your bones. This is one of the things I found, because your body doesn't have time to repair itself when you are stressed out. It increases your chronic pains. It decreases your ability to cope with stress, decreases your ability to respond under pressure, kills creativity, and affects your balance. So think about all those things, and that's just as an adult, how that affects us. If it's your kids, think about your kids when they have a lack of sleep. It says they're not interested or motivated with attention for everyday tasks. They are forgetful. They could have blurred vision due to lack of sleep, difficulty learning new information. It affects their emotions. They can be more moody, irritable. They can be impulsive. Their stress is increased throughout the day. There's a train going past me now. So these are things that affect our kids when they lack sleep. And one thing I was fascinated by is how it can worsen the symptoms of any existing behavior. Anxiety, mood disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, things that kids are going through that are already extra for moms where we have kids with disabilities. The lack of sleep can actually make those things worse. Now, the research has also shown that kids who consistently get a good night's sleep, and I will tell you what that is in just a moment, are more creative. They can concentrate for a longer time period. They have better problem-solving skills. They're better able to make positive decisions. They're more able to learn and remember new things. They have more energy during the day. I realize that may be a plus and a minus for some of you. And they can create and maintain good relationships with others. Now, here's the thing. Everybody is different. So consider yourself, consider your kids. Here are some physical symptoms that happen that give you an indication that there's a need for more sleep, specifically for our kids, all right? And you may be going, oh my goodness, Paula, this is all me. So be aware. Physical symptoms that you may notice with your kids, that it's hard to wake them up in the morning, that they fall asleep after being woken up and they need you to wake them up again repeatedly. Or they're yawning frequently throughout the day. They complain of feeling tired and want to nap during the day. They prefer to lie down during the day, even if it means missing activities with friends and family. They are falling asleep. They seem drowsy at school or at home during their homework, which is what happened with my daughter and why I had to start learning this stuff. They want to consume unhealthy stimulants, such as caffeine or sugar, regularly. Their immune system is down and they get sick more often. So these are indicators that we're not getting enough sleep. Now, ironically, when I was younger, many of these fit me. But my mom didn't know this stuff. She didn't know how to help me. She didn't know exactly what was going on, and she was guessing. So that's why I thought it was really important to tell you guys about this stuff. I was able to find that the Canadian Pediatric Society produced a general guide for, on average, the amount of sleep children need over a 24-hour period. Now, this includes naps. All right? Ready for this? Newborns. Mamas with your newborns. You may feel like they are never sleeping. Ironically, you also know they take naps multiple times, right? 0 to 2 months, they need 16 to 18 hours of sleep. And that is like 3 or 4 hours at a time. Which implies, mamas, the only way you're going to get the sleep you need is to make sure you force yourself, and at least that's what it would have been for me, force yourself to take a nap when the baby's napping. People tell us to do that all the time. But if we are trying to work through and get our designated amount of sleep at night, it's not going to happen. The longest amount my children slept at a shot at night, and it was a huge blessing, was 5 hours when they were first born. That was a huge blessing for us. Most people don't get that. So be aware so that you can plan and be prepared. Mamas with babies 2 months to 6 months old, they need to sleep 14 to 16 hours. So you are still on nap patrol, mamas. Now, as they get a little bit older, 6 months to 1 year, 14 hours a day. That does include naps, all right? Toddlers, 1 to 3 years old, they need at least 10 to 13 hours of sleep. Preschoolers, 3 to 5 years old, they need 10 to 12 hours of sleep. School-age kids need at least, for those that are 5 years to 10 years old, need at least 10 to 12 hours of sleep. Now, the National Sleep Foundation also provided guidelines for older kids. It said for those who are 10 to 13 need 9 to 11 hours of sleep. 14 to 18-year-olds need at least 8 to 10 hours. And they basically are saying that is a guideline. Each child is different. In addition, your child might need a little more sleep sometimes, depending on the time and how stressed they feel or how healthy they feel. There are some ways to get a better night's sleep. One of them is to make sure you stick to a good sleep schedule, the same bedtime, same wake time, even on the weekends. Now, this is a hard one for me, but if this is something you can do, awesome, yay, go for it. They also recommend having a good, relaxing bedtime ritual. What that means is have something that you do the same every night. Whether that means you're reading or you're listening to music or you're doing stretches like yoga or things like that. Also, they mention the National Sleep Foundation, this is where this is from, mentions that any bright lights keep you from being sleepy. So if you're watching TV or if you're looking at your phone or the computer, the bright light from those will keep you from sleeping, which is a problem. Now, you may want to take naps. They actually don't recommend naps. I would say naps are probably good if they are short naps. Based on other research I've done, the idea of longer naps, not necessarily beneficial. They mentioned getting daily exercise helps with your sleep, which I have found to be true. Also, not to exercise at any time of day that takes away from your opportunity to sleep. They also mentioned making sure that your room is a relaxing space. As it gets cooler, the cooler weather helps. Apparently, optimal temperatures are between 60 and 67 degrees. I personally like the upper 70s, but that's just me. They mention avoiding alcohol, cigarettes, heavy meals in the evening. Ironically, not making your big heavy meal at the end of the day, because this can cause some discomfort from indigestion or from digestion and make it hard to sleep. They mention avoid eating for at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, because it will mess with your ability to settle down. You want to, if you can't sleep, they recommend going into another room, doing something relaxing until you feel tired and coming back to your room. Make sure that you wind down before you try to sleep, at least an hour or so before you're going to bed. Do some kind of calming activity. Avoiding electronics before bed. Like I said, we found that it was a big problem for us if we had electronics in our room. I actually woke up randomly in the middle of the night whenever my phone updated and flashed bright light. Now, if you struggle like I do, then pick one of these things to work on for a month so that you can get that as a habit. Give yourself a month to strengthen the habit, and then work on the next thing. These are tasks that I wish somebody had told me that I could do when I was younger, and if they did, and I wish I had listened. I'm currently working my way through them right now. We don't have cell phones in our room, and that, like I said, messed with me for a little bit. I've been getting my regular 7 hours of sleep, but I've discovered that for me, I might need a little bit more. I praise God because of my struggles. My girls have gotten some really good sleep schedules because I was aware that I needed to work on that for them. If you are a younger mom, imagine the progress you can make as you seek to help your kids and your family. We all need rest. We all need the regeneration that sleep gives us, and many of us long for moments to pause. Maybe we won't need those moments of pause as often when we get this basic need down. When we trust God with our issues enough to pause and rest, He promises to rejuvenate us. In many ways, we need to release this area of our lives so that God can bless it. Remember what Hebrews 4:10 says, "For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their work, just as God did from His." If you want to know more about how to read the Bible, understand it, and grow, check out my Udemy course called Bible Basics. The link is in the show notes. Also, I will have links to these various research studies that I found. And if you need to release some of your stress by connecting with other moms, come join our Bible Momming Facebook group or get on the newsletter at BibleMomming.com. Just scroll down to the bottom, leave your email, and you'll get updates on momming events and things that we are doing. I hope you are having a good day and a good night's sleep. Mamas, I want to thank you for sticking with me through this. I know that if you went the distance and listened to this whole podcast, then sleep must be an issue for you. And I will be praying for you this week as I pray for other mamas and our struggles as we are trying to figure out how to be the best moms we know how to be with our kids. Now, would you also please leave a rating or a review for this podcast on wherever you listen to it? It is a free podcast. You can subscribe to it so it goes into your feed all the time, but let other people know about it. And when you review and rate it, that is part of how that works. You could also share it with a friend if you think they are struggling with sleep as well. I've enjoyed this time we have together. I know you have plenty of things to do and many options, so thank you for listening. Remember, love is patient, love is kind, and that is never more real than in our families. God bless you and have a great week.